Ologies.
Rocks.
Hey guys, we're back at Green Thread. I'm Alexis,
I'm Allie.
and we have a very special guest today over here. If you want to
Billy.
introduce yourself, Billy. And today we're going to be talking about geology. And for our fun fact today, did you know that Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth, is made of marine limestone? That's a good one, right?
Geologist knew it.
With
Yep.
clam fossils in it, no less.
Yes. So that's more evidence that it was marine life up there, which is really, really cool. So yeah, I guess we'll just hop right into it, talking about some geology with our personal geologist.
I was about to say, do you want to give a little short intro of your profession?
Sure, of course. I'm a geology professor at Georgia Highlands College. I've been there since 1994, so a few years. I became interested in geology as a young person by going on camping trips, and my mom had taken a geology course and knew what the rocks and fossils were, so I was hooked immediately.
That's so cool.
That's awesome.
I love to hear when people like the moment they were like, I'm gonna do this for my life, or like this is my passion. Those moments are so cool to me.
Well,
Mhm.
there was a lot of time in between, but
Yeah, that's how it goes. That's
yeah,
how it
that's how I
goes.
got hooked.
Yeah.
Thanks for
That's
having me.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming. So we're outside, as you can tell. This
Yeah.
is one of the
This
first.
is not normal.
Yeah, no. This is one of the first episodes we've done outside, which I feel like we should do more often, considering this is what the point of this podcast is. But
Yeah.
this is going to be, like Alexis said, geology. So kind of going off of what you were just talking about, of like all the moments in time that you like kind of have pinpointed in your brain of this is what I wanted to do. Is there like an initial drive that you had to study it, or is it just kind of, do you have like one thing, or is it just a bunch of different things?
Well, it's a lot of things. I was drawn to it because you get to stay outside. So studying things that are outside, and as I said, I grew up going camping all the time, and my parents loved to go hiking and exploring and collecting, and they were just curious, and so that curiosity rubbed off on me, and I wanted to find um, a profession that I could also do the same thing, be
Yeah.
outside. Yep. So that was it. From there, a lot of things interest me: paleontology, study of fossils, of course, and stratigraphy, the study of layered rocks. And here in Northwest Georgia, we have some rocks that have been deformed into faults and folds, and that's actually what I did my master's thesis work in. So that's called structural geology. So geology deals with a lot of things.
That's really cool.
That is super cool. And going off of that, I know that geology can really easily turn into different studies, and you can intertwine paleontology and a lot of other things on top of that, or a lot of other things are based on the geology of an area. But what makes geology distinct from other disciplines?
Wow, that's a great question. Geology is just earth science, and it does. At that point, you've got to really break into subdisciplines because the earth science studies everything from the upper levels of the atmosphere all the way to the core of the planet and everything that's in between. So, Alexis, we talked about water a lot.
Yes, we did. This semester was a lot of water.
A lot of water. So the hydrosphere, the biosphere, the lithosphere, all of those subcomponents make up the big discipline of geology.
So is
So to come back again, I don't think that there's something that really separates geology from the other sciences. I rather think of it more as an integrative discipline.
Okay, that's perfect. And a lot of science really does integrate. It all just, the lines get really blurry sometimes, I feel like.
That's what
So
gets fun too.
it is. It's really fun because it's like, oh, I'm gonna dabble a little bit here, here, here. It's super fun.
Yeah.
I like to think of like geology as kind of the ground, like of everything else. Like it kind of holds the answers to all the things that we
Well,
study.
I like to think of it that way too.
So like going off of like that ideology, is geology just like soil, or like how would you describe something along the lines of like what geology is from the baseline?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you mentioned soils, and we talked a lot about soils
Yeah.
not too long ago. Yeah, so that's part of it: soil, water. Um, the lithosphere refers to the rocky part of it, and once we get below the lithosphere, well, we haven't really gotten below the lithosphere. We've never been able, as a species, as humans, to penetrate all the way through the crust. So we use secondary measuring tools, similar to in principle to sonograms, Seismic geology looks at the Earth's interior, but that's all indirect measurements. Um, so there are many, many subdisciplines. We mentioned a few of them. I mean, meteorology could be considered a earth science discipline because it deals with the atmospheric regimes.
Okay, that's awesome. And this is a really broad question, and we know that it is important. But why is geology important to study?
Oh my goodness. I mean, we're here in this place. We got here because we drove an automobile with an internal combustion engine using fossil fuels that were
Mhm.
found by using geoscience methods.
Mhm.
The thing is made out of steel and iron and aluminum that was mined out of the earth.
Mhm.
Um, but most of these things we never think about, we take for granted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But honestly, everything that we use or do uh, in a modern culture uses some material that has come from the earth and been processed in some way or another. So somebody had to locate that material, and then it had to be extracted, then it had to be refined or purified in some way, and then made into a part. And all of those, I mean, I think honestly, geology is an understanding of the earth and the materials that are in the earth, whether it's something simple like iron or something more complex like rare earth elements.
Mhm.
Hear a lot about REEs these
Mhm.
days with respect to batteries. We wouldn't be who we are as a species if we didn't understand how to find and extract these materials out of the planet. So that's a big answer to a big question,
Mhm.
but it's only one answer. Our climate is dependent on cycles.
Mhm.
Our use of water is dependent on being able to locate that water and utilize it properly. I mean, we people didn't think too much about geology prior to the Industrial Revolution when until they burned up all the woods that were
Mhm.
in the
Yeah.
European forests, and
Mhm.
then they didn't have wood anymore, so they had to go get coal. Coal is a lot harder to get than
Mhm.
wood, but yet it has a lot more energy in it, and so that led to Industrial Revolution, and the game on after that. So it's intimately related to humans and the things that we've been able to do.
All right.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's awesome. And like kind of going off of that, like considering how long we have been basically having to understand Earth and how geology kind of was founded, what ways do people study geology? Is it, kind of a one track mind, or is there like different ways that people can go about like studying it?
Um, well, that goes back to the many subdisciplines that I mentioned. So a paleontologist, for example, would follow a very different academic track and career path than a volcanologist.
Mhm.
Hardly any overlap there. So if one was looking to make a career in earth science, and at some point you have to decide, okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be an
Mhm.
academic, or I'm gonna
Mhm.
be a minerals. I'm going to go into mining or
Mhm.
fossil fuel industry or soil or water. That
Hmm.
it's like so many other disciplines. They're so specific once you get down into the
Nitty
nitty
gritty.
gritty.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about minerals and mining, that makes me think about any modern day challenges or challenges with conservation in geology. So I don't really know how to phrase the question here, but how would you describe the process of conservation and geology, or what kind of today or in recent years have you seen being done for conservation and geology?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're sitting actually in a location that relates to that. Just a few miles up the road here is a creek called Furnace Creek, where there was a furnace back in pre-Civil War days, and this furnace was designed to melt rock in order to extract the iron out of it. It was about 20 feet high, is made of stone. You guys, being from Bartow County,
Mhm.
Alexis, you're
Mhm.
familiar with Cooper's Creek,
Yes.
Cooper's
Mhm.
Furnace over there. So
Mhm.
these furnaces were all around, and they're present for the extraction of and the refining of these earth materials like iron. Um, but these extractive industries
Mhm.
are environmentally bad practices in general. They're environmentally um, not desirable, and it's almost impossible to extract materials out of the ground without
Mhm.
tearing the daylights out of it. Right.
Right.
So conservation and extraction industries have always been, to some degree, at odds with one another.
Mhm.
Um, some more so than others. The rare earth minerals extractions are extremely destructive
Mhm.
from an environmental standpoint, and yet we've come to, I don't see anybody saying no. I'll go back to horse and buggy, thanks.
Right.
Yeah.
Put that in the ground.
Yeah.
So we've got to find ways, and obviously there's political pressures, particularly now,
Mhm.
to roll back a lot of environmental practices for conservation.
Mhm.
So it's a real delicate balance between what people want, what people vote for, and what people will pay for,
Mhm.
and how how we get a hold of those materials, and not only that, but who has them and who
Mhm.
doesn't have
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Do you think that going that just sparked a question in my mind. Do you think that the extraction method of some of those materials can really play a part in the conservation of you know, geologic things like you're talking about with REEs and all of that?
Um, So it's very different for depending on what you're extracting. If you're getting coal out of the ground, the coal occurs in a layer, and you're going to get that layer out, and then you can put the land back in the same configuration that it was beforehand. So
Mhm.
mountaintop coal removal, that's a different
Mhm.
story. But Alexis, we saw, I think, some places out west where they
Mhm.
had mined coal, and then they put it back
Mhm.
to a reasonable degree for what it looked like before. But every extractive industry, depending on what's being mind is
Mhm.
going to have a different method and a different level of remediation and or pollution associated with it. So um, there are ways to do it, some better than others, but the far end of the spectrum would just say leave it in the ground
Yeah.
and then you don't have a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not
That's not
very good.
feasible in this world anymore.
True.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you kind of mentioned conservation based on the site that we're at. So for those who are watching and listening, we are currently at one of the pocket campground sites up in Floyd County. Can you kind of briefly explain the history of the site we're at?
Sure. This was this was established as a civilian conservation camp or CCC camp in 1938. That was President Roosevelt's response to some hard times that the country had fallen on the Great Depression, and he was simply trying to put people back to work. And so there were 200 to 300 men and boys, older boys, that lived in this area, and they were charged with conserving. The National Forest was involved in this too, so
Mhm.
that was an early on conservation project, and a large part of what we have seen today and is all around us is part of the U.S. Forest Service conservation efforts. So they were charged with maintaining some of the roads around here, building a lot of the features that we see in this camp and in other places, the Cowan Falls, those
Mhm.
trails, those stair trails that we
Mhm.
climbed. They were built by the civilian, and they had some of the only mechanized equipment in the area at the time. Most farmers here were working with mules
Mhm.
and
Mm-hmm.
plows, but they were able to use some of these mechanized tractors, fossil fuel fired
Yeah.
tractors, to turn some of these high slopes into terraced slopes
Mhm.
so that they could farm more land surface, develop more acreage. And at that time, the money crop was cotton.
Mhm.
So the more land that could be cleared and made as arable or farmable land, the better.
Mhm.
And that's what a lot of these folks did up and down the valley was to. Now many of those terraces now are not even visible because we don't grow cotton here anymore, and
Right.
we don't grow as much of anything as we used to grow.
Mhm.
The forest has reclaimed a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
properties. So the CCC camp was here, and it existed here for several years. And on weekend nights, summer weekend nights, particularly holidays. I imagine that on a Memorial Day holiday weekend,
Mhm.
this would happen, but it happened other weekends too. They would get musicians from Rome
Okay. Mhm.
and
Oh.
and a busload or two of females,
Mhm.
and they would drive them up here, and they'd have a big dance for all the men and women, and they'd
Oh.
party until midnight, and
Oh
then they'd
yeah.
put everybody back in the buses and send them all back home.
Oh.
So a lot of history here in this location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
That's
amazing. I wonder, like, if there's any snapshots of that, on Google Maps or Google Earth, you can go back in time. I know you'd shown us some photos
we
from,
can insert those, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Google newspapers, the Rome News Tribune has some information about this, and some of
Okay.
the things I've just said are there. If you just did a simple search for it, you don't find a whole lot. You'll get
Mhm.
references to this campground, the pocket
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
campground, and they'll tell you a few basics. But if you dive a little bit deeper into it, you get the fun
Yeah.
details.
Go down a rabbit hole and
Yeah,
you'll find it all.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if y'all ever go camping, just remember that there probably is history behind where you're going. Because
Absolutely.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that before we were here, because we were looking at
Mhm.
some of the ruins that are over there by the spring, and I was like, oh, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know asked you if there was like a trivial point in which you wanted to study geology, but would you say that you have a favorite, like, I don't know if you ever did research for geology, or I'm sure you have with all the classes we've had with you already, but like, what would you say has been your favorite thing to discover in geology?
Um, my master's thesis work was done here in this area. In fact, this region we're in right now, in the Pocket area, and then further north towards Villanelle and up towards Dalton was all my master's research area, and that was a structural geology research project. So structural geology is a study of folded and faulted rocks. So all of those sandstone layers we were climbing up through were deposited on the seafloor as flat horizontal layers, but we collided with Europe and northern Africa um, to form Pangea. And
Mhm.
those rocks were folded, and it's hard to think of rocks being folded, but we actually saw a bench right
Yeah,
over
the
there that's got a
sagging
nice little
rock.
sag in it. Yep. So
Yep.
if force is applied slowly over time, rocks will bend.
Mhm.
And so these folded layers and these faulted layers were a product of that plate collision that formed Pangea. So that's really, um, I really enjoyed that project, and it's honestly what's kept me here close to home. We rented a place as I was finishing my master's thesis work, and once I was done with that, we decided just to stay here and raise a family. So we only live 15 minutes south of here, and so this it was an impactful project in my own personal life.
Hmm.
I didn't change any world views with the project, but
Right, but
yeah,
it kind of shaped your life.
it did shape
Yeah.
Yeah.
my life. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I was going to ask, I know you mentioned some sandstone. I was going to ask about the geology of this area. Like what kind of what is the geology like here?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the age of the rocks is Paleozoic in age, so that's the old life, where all major phyla became established during that old life. So the, that Paleozoic era consists of periods, smaller units of time that you probably heard of, words like Cambrian,
Mhm.
Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian. So those are discrete time periods within the Paleozoic era. But at that time, we were underwater here. North America, North Georgia was under a relatively shallow tropical sea,
Mhm.
shallow, several hundreds of feet deep.
Yeah.
And so sediment was collecting on that seafloor. What we were mainly in this morning hiking was sandstones, continental deposited on a continental shelf.
Mhm.
And that formation, that Red Mountain Formation, is over 1,000 feet thick. So
Mhm.
it accumulated sediment for quite a long time.
Mhm.
But the entire package of sedimentary rocks that are represented in northwest Georgia is about 20 to 25,000 feet thick.
Mm.
We just can't see all of it because it's covered up with our
Lots of
moist
trees, yeah.
vegetation. Yeah, yeah. But underneath it are layered rocks, much like at the Grand Canyon, except at the Grand Canyon they're flat, they're
Mhm.
horizontal, and
Hmm.
here they're folded into wrinkles. So that went on for that kind of deposition and sandstone, limestones, shales, rocks that we call chert.
Mhm.
So several different sedimentary rock types were deposited over the course of 300 million years. Eventually, the collision was complete. The seaway drained away somewhere else. The rocks have been folded and faulted, and ever since then, erosion has been doing its work on them and exposing them as the ridges and valleys that we find.
Do
Yeah.
you think that, like, now that this is this specific area of Northwest Georgia being like a campground or like a recreational use, do you think that's also affected the like geological change over time of this area?
Oh, our footprint, our human footprint, is so small and quick on a geological time scale. Now, obviously, as we were talking about some environmental concerns, that's
Mhm.
kind of a
Yeah.
different story. But um, it's more the other way around.
Hmm.
Geology is going to win in the long
Yeah.
run. The Earth is going to have its way
Mhm.
in the long run, and we're just here for the ride as
Yeah.
best we can make it. Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, geology is gonna shape us before we shape it. That's
Well, there's a phrase that I like to. I hope I get it right. I'll be close. Humanity exists upon geological consent.
mm,
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
that makes sense.
That's yeah, that's it. Hit the nail on the head with that one. I wanted to ask also, how has geology evolved over your career?
That's a great question. It parallels the same kind of changes that you would see in any scientific discipline along with
Mhm.
technology.
Mhm.
So geology is clearly a visual technology. So the advent of GIS and other
Mhm.
space-based seeing
Mhm.
apparatus have been incredible. So LiDAR can see, down into the soil a
Mhm.
little bit, and Google Earth,
Yeah.
this high resolution, and all of the things that are associated with that type of visual technological enhancement has really been huge. Because before, uh, well, when when I was working on my master's thesis, there was no Google Earth, of course. There was no
Right.
cell phones,
Yeah.
Right.
for that matter, and laptop computers. No,
No.
you had to reserve time on the mainframe on the campus if you needed to do any computing, anything
Uh-huh.
powerful computing. So it was boots on the ground and boots in the creek. You had to actually go out into the field and do the work, and that's really why I got into it, because I
Mhm.
like stomping up and down the
Oh
creeks and
yeah. I mean that's what
collecting
we're here
rocks.
for.
Yeah.
Exactly. And eventually you have to ground truth almost anything that's coming from the
Oh
sky,
yeah.
but um, we had to do that in the real
Mhm.
back in the day. So technology's made it great, but on the other hand, I know geologists who just sit in the office all the time, look at a
Mm,
computer screen, and
yeah.
Mhm.
that's not for me. It's they do good work, but
Right, of course.
it's not my work.
Yeah.
Would you say that, like, even though technology has its, cons about stuff like that, would you say it's kind of made things quicker now,
Oh yeah,
or?
oh yeah, absolutely quicker. Yep. The other thing is not only has enhancements in space and satellite technology changed things, but we also have better tools to peer down below the lithosphere down into the crust. So seismic
Yeah.
information. When we get an earthquake, or even, and we had an earthquake
I was
recently.
just
Yeah.
gonna mention that because I was in my bedroom and I thought, my parents or somebody had walked down the hallway. Nobody was home though. I was like,
I was
what
asleep.
was that? And I get on Facebook and everybody's like, did y'all feel that earthquake? So I was
Hmm.
like, oh, all right. It wasn't just, me being crazy.
It
It was
was not,
something.
and people started texting me right
Yeah.
away too.
I bet. I
What was
bet.
that?
All right, did we just have an earthquake? We did. Okay. So those types of events produce what's called seismic waves. Essentially, it's analogous to a sound wave. So it's compressions and extensions.
Mhm.
Uh, the same way a sound wave moves through the air, these seismic waves move through Earth materials, and they can be transmitted completely through the planet. And with the receiving instrument, we can process those seismic signals and get a really good idea of what's going on in the interior of the planet, which we don't have any hope of ever
Yeah.
touching or seeing. Yeah.
That's crazy. One last question on my part. With going off of what Alexis was talking about with, like, how has geology changed your career for, like, younger people to know, how would you, I don't know, I guess, advise people who are finally figuring out they love geology? How would you advise them to go into this field and approach this study?
Oh, nice question. I would say the route into the career field has not changed all that much. You need to get a good, strong background at the bachelor's level, and a master's degree is almost required anymore for any of our scientific disciplines. But geology, that's also true for geology, and that's the point at which you can decide. Well, I want to be a paleontologist, or I want to be a hydrologist, or I want to study, something else. You can start to head for one of the subdisciplines. Um, so that career advice has not really changed that much. But I would add that along the way now, there are many organizations that are devoted to young people starting, early career scientists, to young women as scientists, and so to align yourself with a group that represents you or who looks like you, and then begin to go out into the field or go to professional conferences and network. Walk right up to find the people who are doing the things that you want to do, and go meet them
Mhm.
and stick your hand out and shake their hand and say, I want to be like you.
Yeah.
What advice do you have? And that really hasn't, that's old school standard
Yeah.
Yeah.
advice too, but it's really powerful.
It's great advice. I mean, you have
Mhm.
to get out there and meet people, and that's all it takes sometimes. It's just, hey, I love what you're doing. Can you tell me about it? What can I do to be like you? And I mean, it could be a 15-minute conversation that changes your life.
Yeah, I was about to say, a lot of people in any science field, when you ask them that question, they are more than obliged to talk about their stuff for
Oh, yeah.
hours.
They're
So
flattered. They're flattered that you've
yeah.
asked, and they're doing the thing they do because they love it and they like to talk about it too. So it can open lots of doors.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate again you being here. I know we're honestly using this as a win-win of doing this and camping, but we appreciate you being on the
Oh, that's
podcast.
great.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you so
having me. It's
much.
so good to be with y'all again.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Well, everyone, we are Green Thread, and we are finally, staying tuned and keeping you now not only attached to sustainability, but to the ground, to dirt, to geology,
To
and hopefully,
everything.
hopefully, you've learned more about this subject and how you can get involved if you are passionate about it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.